The sun, a relentless, bleached white orb, had presided over the Arabian Peninsula for centuries, witnessing the slow, patient dance of dunes and the fleeting dramas of mankind. But in this particular year, its gaze felt heavier, more accusatory. The air, typically a dry, clean vessel for the scent of dust and flowering acacia, was now tainted with a different aroma, the smell of fear. It was a metallic taste on the tongue, a coldness in the pit of the stomach that had nothing to do with the desert night. The news had arrived, not with a single messenger, but in fragments, from trembling traders, from nomadic Bedouin, with eyes wide with a terror they could scarcely describe. It came from the south, a poison seeping up the ancient trade routes. Abraha al-Ashram, the Abyssinian viceroy of Yemen, was on the march, and he was not coming with just an army. He was bringing a beast from legend, a creature that made the very earth tremble, an elephant. In the lush, mountainous highlands of Yemen, Abraha's ambition had festered from a statesman's desire for prestige into a tyrant's monomania. His cathedral in Sana'a was his masterpiece, his challenge to the heavens themselves. He had named it Al-Qules, a word borrowed from the Greek ecclesia, but on his lips, it sounded like a declaration of war. He had designed it to be the most magnificent structure in Arabia, a deliberate and brutal overshadowing of the simple ancient cube in Mecca. Its stones were fitted by the finest Coptic masons brought from Egypt. Its pews were carved from African ebony. Its walls were inlaid with veins of gold and silver, and its altar was a single slab of white marble that gleamed under 100 perpetually lit lamps. He envisioned a new pilgrimage, a new axis around which the commercial and spiritual life of the entire peninsula would revolve. His decree was absolute. All tribes were to redirect their devotion and their trade to his new Jerusalem in Sana'a. The response from the arid heart of Arabia was not the obedient silence he expected. It was a ripple of mocking laughter. The Arabs, bound by ancestral blood to the sanctuary built by Ibrahim and Ismail, saw his cathedral not as a wonder, but as an obscene vanity, a foreign implant. Their defiance was not organized, it was organic, a reflex of the soul. And then came the ultimate insult. A man from the tribe of Kinana, whose name was lost to history but whose act became legend, journeyed to Sana'a. Under cover of night he entered the pristine, silent vastness of Al-Qules and defiled it, leaving the stench of human waste to mix with the perfume of incense. It was a crude, devastating act of symbolic warfare. For Abraha, this was the final, unforgivable blasphemy. His rage was cold, calculated, and absolute. He would not merely punish a tribe, he would erase the source of their identity. He would reduce the Kaaba to a meaningless pile of rubble, ensuring that for 1,000 years no one would even remember its name. To achieve this, he assembled a force not just for conquest, but for psychological annihilation. His army was a living embodiment of his hubris. Legions of Abyssinian soldiers, their dark faces stern beneath bronze helmets, crested with horsehair, their broad shields of hardened hippopotamus hide forming an impenetrable wall. There were Arab allies too, drawn from rival tribes like the Banu Qatham, their hearts burning with bitter envy towards the Quraysh's privileged status, their loyalty purchased with promises of plunder and dominance. And at the very heart of this monstrous procession was the engine of his terror. Not one, but several elephants, with the great bull Mahmud as their champion. The beast was a mountain of living flesh, his skin like ancient leather, his eyes small and intelligent above tusks, sheathed in sharpened bronze. A magnificent howdah, crafted from rare sandalwood and draped in purple linens, was strapped to his back, a mobile throne from which Abraha intended to watch the Kaaba's destruction. The rhythmic, seismic thud of the elephant's footsteps was the drumbeat of an approaching apocalypse. Inside the walls of Mecca, the Quraysh were plunged into a maelstrom of panic that threatened to tear the very fabric of their society. The city was not a military power. Its strength lay in its sanctity, its neutrality. Its men were merchants and guides, skilled with the javelin and the sword in personal combat, but utterly unprepared for a clash of empires. The Council of Elders, the Mullah, convened in a state of near paralysis. The air in the meeting hall was thick with sweat and despair. "We must meet them in the open," cried a young warrior, his hand gripping the hilt of his sword so tightly, his knuckles were white. "We will die on our feet, facing them, rather than wait like sheep for the slaughter. Let our blood sanctify the approaches to the Haram. Let it be a lesson to all who would dare defile it." A roar of approval met his words from the younger faction. The romance of a glorious death was a potent sedative for their terror. Another elder, wiser but no less afraid, argued for pragmatism. "We are outnumbered 100 to 1. Our courage is a spark. Their army is an ocean that will extinguish it without a ripple. We must negotiate. We must offer tribute, a third of our wealth, half, anything to turn him aside." The debate raged, a storm of fear and fury with no eye, no center. All eyes eventually turned to the silent figure who had yet to speak. Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim, the patriarch of the Banu Hashim and the de facto leader of the Quraysh, was a man whose authority was not proclaimed, but assumed. He was not the tallest, nor the most vocal, but his presence commanded a profound silence. His face was a roadmap of a long and thoughtful life, his beard gray, his eyes the color of weathered flint, holding a deep, unshakable calm that seemed utterly alien to the surrounding hysteria. He rose slowly, the rustle of his woolen cloak, the only sound in the suddenly quiet room. "You speak of two paths," he said, his voice low, yet carrying to every corner. "The path of the sword, and the path of the purse. Both are paths of despair. Both assume that the fate of the house rests in our hands." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "You prepare to die for the house, a noble sentiment. But have you forgotten that the house already has a lord, a protector, who needs no protection from us? We are its custodians, its servants. We do not own it to defend it. Our strength lies not in our numbers, nor in our wealth, but in our trust in him." A wave of confusion passed through the assembly. It sounded like passivity, like a council of surrender. But then Abdul Muttalib revealed his astonishing plan. He had received word that Abraha's advanced scouts, in their sweep through the outskirts of the city, had seized vast herds of livestock. Among the plunder were 200 of Abdul Muttalib's own prized camels, the foundation of his family's wealth and status. "I will go to Abraha," he announced, his tone leaving no room for debate. "I will walk into his camp, and I will request the return of my property." The silence that followed was deafening. It seemed the height of insanity. On the eve of annihilation, with the world ending, the chief of the city was going to barter for camels. Murmurs of disbelief and anger rippled through the room. Had age finally stolen his wits? "Camels," the young warrior exploded. "You speak of camels when the house of Allah is threatened." Abdul Muttalib turned his flint-like gaze on the young man. "I am the lord of my camels," he stated with an impeccable, unassailable logic. "I must defend what is mine. As for the house, it has a lord of its own. He will defend it." And so, accompanied by a small delegation of his stunned but loyal sons, Abdul Muttalib walked out of the gates of Mecca and towards the immense cloud of dust that marked the location of Abraha's camp. The journey was a descent into a waking nightmare. The sheer scale of the encampment was overwhelming. A city of tents and weapons, the din of thousands of men and animals, the smell of cooking fires and forge smoke. They were escorted through ranks of sneering soldiers to the very center of this arrogance. The meeting was a tableau of two diametrically opposed concepts of power. Abraha held court in obscene opulence. He lounged on a throne of rich carpets and silk cushions, adorned with gold armbands and a heavy necklace of raw amber. He was surrounded by the tangible symbols of temporal authority: armored guards with naked scimitars, fawning advisors, and the immense hulking form of the elephant Muhammad, tethered nearby, a living symbol of irresistible force. Before this spectacle of vanity stood Abdul Muttalib. He wore the simple, undyed wool of a desert Arab. His power was intangible. It was in his posture, his unblinking gaze, the quiet dignity that radiated from him. He did not kneel. He did not tremble. Abraha, intrigued by this audacity, leaned forward. He had expected a cowering delegation offering unconditional surrender. He had not expected this. "I am told you are the leader of this people," Abraha began, his voice dripping with condescension. "I have come to erase the shrine of your fathers from the earth, to put an end to your primitive idolatry, and you come to me about livestock?" Abdul Muttalib met the viceroy's gaze without flinching. "I am the owner of the camels," he replied, his voice steady and clear. "I have come for what is mine. It is my responsibility. As for the house," he continued, and his voice seemed to deepen, to take on a resonance that quieted the very air around them. "It has a lord of its own, a lord who is its owner and its protector. He will defend it. It is not for me to tell him how." The words, "it has a lord," hung in the space between them, a simple, devastating theological truth. In that moment, Abdul Muttalib was drawing a line in the sand of eternity. On one side was Abraha with all his elephants, his legions, his gold, his cathedral, all of it part of the created world. On the other side was the Kaaba, the house of the Creator. Abraha, for all his might, was merely a creature attempting to assault the domain of his Maker. A flicker of unease, cold and primitive, passed behind Abraha's eyes. He quickly masked it with a scoff of derision. But the seed of doubt had been planted. In a gesture of theatrical magnanimity, wanting to prove his own power was so vast, he could afford such trivialities, he waved a hand. "Return the man his camels," he ordered. His victory, he assured himself, was merely delayed by a few hours. Upon his return to Mecca, Abdul Muttalib did not order the forging of more swords or the building of barricades. He did the only thing he now believed mattered. He went directly to the Kaaba, a simple structure of dark stone, draped in humility. He grasped the ancient metal ring on its door, feeling the coolness of the ages beneath his hand. The people of Mecca, those who had doubted him, those who were terrified, gathered around, a silent, desperate congregation. He raised his hands to the heavens, and his prayer was not a desperate, bargaining plea, but a powerful, serene affirmation of tawakkul, absolute trust and reliance. "O Allah," his voice rang out, strong and clear against the silent, fearful city. "A man protects his home, therefore protect your house. Let not their cross and their cunning ever overcome your power. If you will to leave them and our Qibla to their own devices, it is what you will. Your will is sovereign. But if you are leaving it for us to protect, then let our hands be the instruments of your victory and grant us succor against them." He had done all that was required of a man. He had asserted his personal responsibility and had completely surrendered the matter beyond his control to its rightful owner. Following his lead, the Quraysh abandoned the city. They withdrew to the heights of the surrounding mountains, to the caves of Jabal Abu Qubays and Jabal an-Nur, leaving the empty streets and the silent sanctuary to its lord. At first light, Abraha gave the final order. The army assembled with a deafening clamor of trumpets and drum. It began its triumphant march into the valley leading to Mecca, a river of steel and murderous intent on swallowing the tiny, undefended city. The elephant Muhammad was prodded to the front, a living siege engine. But then, the machinery of arrogance began to break down. Muhammad, who had been placid and obedient for the entire long march from Yemen, stopped dead. He planted his colossal feet into the earth and refused to take another step forward. He swung his great head from side to side, his trunk raised, sniffing the air, sensing something in the invisible fabric of the place that filled him with a primal dread. He trumpeted, a sound not of rage, but of confusion and fear. His handlers, enraged and bewildered, screamed at him. They beat his tough hide with clubs. They stabbed the sensitive flesh behind his ears with sharpened iron goads, drawing rivulets of dark blood. But the great beast would not advance. He knelt, a mountain refusing to move. In frustration, they turned him towards the north, towards the east, towards any other direction, and he moved willingly. But the moment he was turned again towards the south, towards the sanctuary of Mecca, he knelt once more, immovable. A superstitious dread began to spread through the ranks of the army. This was a terrible omen. The Arab mercenaries exchanged nervous glances. Their ancient beliefs were stirred. Before this unease could turn into mutiny, the sky itself began to change. From the direction of the sea, a dark smudge appeared on the horizon. It moved with impossible, terrifying speed, blotting out the harsh light of the sun. A sigh of relief went through the Abyssinian ranks. A storm would offer respite from the crushing heat, but as the cloud drew nearer, the sigh curdled into a scream of collective terror. It was not a cloud of rain. It was a cloud of birds, flocks upon flocks of them, countless in number, a swirling, living tempest. They were small birds, abiel, with wings like dark arrows. The sound was not of song, but of a million beating wings, a roar like a continuous peal of thunder. They flew in perfect, terrifying formation directly over the halted army. Then they began to dive, and as they dived, each bird released its payload. Each carried 3 small stones, no larger than a chickpea, made of hard-baked clay. The stones fell in a relentless, precise hail. They struck not at random, but with a divine and terrible accuracy. Where a stone struck a soldier, it did not bounce off his helmet or shield. It penetrated. It burned with a strange, corrosive energy, eating through bronze, iron, leather, and flesh alike. Men were not merely wounded, they were dissolved from the inside out, their bodies crumbling away as if made of ancient dry clay. It was not a battle, it was an execution. Panic erupted, a panic far more potent and destructive than any army the Quraysh could have mustered. It was the panic of being utterly, helplessly, and supernaturally undone. Abraha, standing in his howdah, watched his invincible army disintegrate. Then he too was struck. A stone tore through his rich tunic and into his chest. Another shattered his arm. He screamed, not in pain but in utter world-ending horror, as he felt his own body beginning to putrefy and break apart. His men, what was left of them, grabbed him and fled, carrying their dissolving king away from the valley of judgment. He did not die a conqueror's death. He perished piece by piece on the long, harrowing road back to Yemen. His body rotting away even as he drew breath, his kingdom and his monstrous pride annihilated with him. The few shattered survivors who stumbled back to their homes carried with them not just physical scars, but a story that would echo through the generations. A story of a power that made elephants kneel and armed the birds of the air. On the mountainsides, the Quraysh watched, their hearts pounding not with fear, but with an awe so profound it was akin to terror. They descended into a scene of devastating ruin and absolute miraculous salvation. The mighty army was a field of broken, crumbled corpses and abandoned weapons. The Kaaba stood in the center of it all, completely untouched, serene as it had for millennia. The silence that followed the thunder of wings was the loudest testament to faith they would ever know. The lesson was seared into the consciousness of Arabia. The house of Allah is not defended by the sword of man, but by the faith in the heart of man. It is protected by a covenant far older than any tribe, any king, any army. This event, forever known as the Year of the Elephant, became the pivotal point in time, the definitive prelude to a final universal mercy. For in that very year, in the lineage of the man who had stood before a tyrant and declared it as a lord, a child was born in the tribe of Banu Hashim, a boy named Muhammad, upon whom would be revealed a Quran that would forever remember this lesson. Have you not considered how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Did he not make their plan go astray? And he sent against them birds in flocks, striking them with stones of hard clay, and he made them like eaten straw. Quran 105:1-5. It was the eternal reminder that all power, all protection, and all victory belong only to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Lord of the sacred house.